Okay, I'm on. Tell me, you did an audit. We're talking about essentially 3 planes here and a helicopter, right? Is
Two
that
planes and a helicopter.
two planes and a helicopter? What'd you find?
Well, we really have too many aircraft. The utilization rate for these units is, all 3 of them, was under 200 hours a year, which is kind of a commercial standard for what you, as a minimum, look for and under the question, should we have a plane? So we're recommending that the administration either decrease the fleet or repurpose the vehicles.
What would you, when you say repurpose, what would they do? Like the helicopter, you're talking about maybe selling that? That's one of your recommendations, correct?
Right. One of the uses that the helicopter currently gets is marijuana eradication through the Attorney General's office. It's possible that there's more work that needs to be done there, and the availability of the aircraft might enable other important business of the government to be done. But absent that, it's not being used enough for us to keep it, and we really need to take a look at whether we ought to own it.
Don't other peer states, I think is what you call it in the report, have 3 aircraft? Isn't that a general number? Aren't we in line with other states?
Sure. But the thing about looking at peers is you're managing to the median of mediocrity. If everybody else has got it wrong and you've got it wrong too, you all line up. The better way to look at this is the actual utilization rate. And in the private sector, the decision really comes down to how much are you using it. And if you're not over 200 hours, generally a private sector entity wouldn't buy the plane. Now, we're not the private sector, of course, and you have to have some capacity. If there's a disaster, the governor needs to be able to get in and out of where the disaster is. But with all 3 of the units having less than 200 hours, we're recommending that the fleet get right-sized. I'll point out that Florida owns none. Florida outsources its executive travel.
So they don't own any planes. They
Right.
pay someone else to do it. Were you surprised that there don't seem to be a whole lot of guidelines in place for how these planes are used?
I was shocked and disappointed. We have over at Department of Administrative Services, we've got guidelines about using vehicles, but the much more expensive and important assets in aircraft don't have that degree of guidance. And they don't have, lacking the guides, lacking any external standard, there aren't any real controls in place either to make sure that the aircraft are properly used.
So you think that ought to change right away, I assume?
I do, and we've recommended that the administration develop policies. And to their credit, during the course of this, we saw a draft policy that they were circulating, and I've been told that they're going to take our report, use that to improve the draft, and are going to move forward.
1 year of records are being retained, and that's it? Is that?
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Well, the law allows agencies to set their record retention schedules, and then you abide by those. Their record retention schedule was properly promulgated and approved, but we believe that 1 year is entirely insufficient to provide an adequate audit trail and adequate accountability. So we're asking that they revise that schedule to at least keep 4 years plus the current year. That'll ensure that from election cycle to election cycle that the folks that are using that are accountable to the voters.
There's no findings for recovery in this audit. I mean, people are going to gasp at what they see here, but technically there was nothing illegal or improper. Is that right?
An auditor isn't permitted to substitute his or her judgment for the agency that they're auditing. We find facts, and then we apply external objective standards to determine compliance. Well, the facts aren't really in dispute here, but there's no standard to measure compliance with. There's no policy, there's no rules, regulation, or statute. So we believe that that's something that needs to be changed. Now, the fact that there's no standard doesn't, and so therefore there's no findings in the audit report, doesn't mean that these flights were all well advised.
Okay. Out of all the flights, there were 70-some.
73.
There were only 4, essentially, that drew any question.
And all of those got reimbursement, and so they comply with the existing rules such as they are.
So at least for last year, even though the guidelines are lax, as far as this isn't something where public officials are going out on a regular basis and taking planes for their private
No,
use.
to the contrary, what we found is that out of those 73, virtually all of them were unquestionably appropriate. And that's the good news in this for the people of Ohio. This is not an area of rampant abuse, and it's just has the potential for that. So get better controls, better policies, downsize the fleet to get better cost accounting, and save some money.